like a conference call. If you set up a conference call for an hour, people will drag it out for an hour when it could have been easily a 10-minute conversation.
Right.
Same concept, but put that into the work. So what they did was, or work till 1.
Do we want to just start and you can tell me as we go?
Yeah.
Because I think you're going to end up repeating this anyway because people don't
So anyhow,
know.
so it was a trial. Yeah. You'll be
I'm
good.
good. I got this.
You got this? All right. Welcome to another episode of Co-Founders. This is Alex Mont-ros, and we have...
Lisa Mont-ros.
All right. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Should we switch that intro? I like that. But, I'm like kind of bring you into the fold.
Yeah, that works.
Or you start doing. You
just
introduce
go.
me. Okay. All right. So today's topic, this is a really interesting one. And I think it'd be interesting to see what thoughts are out there floating around this whole concept of a 5-hour work day. All right. So recently, this was in the Wall Street Journal. It was in Forbes. Forbes covered it as well. And there was a study that was done, or not a study, there was literally like a company in Germany that ended up doing this, kind of like piloting this idea that you could come to work and then get out by 1 o'clock. So easiest way I can think, kind of break this down. So as business owners, we have conference calls. How many times do we get on conference calls? And let's say it's 30 minutes or it's an hour. And you're sitting there, you're like, did this call really need to be an hour? Now, if you shorten that call time frame, right, to let's say 15 minutes, you literally probably get done everything you need to cover in 15 minutes and then move on. So the concept is the amount of time given in a day, in a work day, for let's say for a call, somebody's going to take advantage of that whole time allotted versus when you're in a time constraint to get things done on a call, you're going to be more crisp and more clear and you're going to move on. In the work day, so it's like, they try this out, this German company. They say, okay, everybody's going to get out. So the whole idea was if we condense the time that somebody could work, would we get them to be more productive? So we'll start there and then we'll go into a little bit more of the details of the, what do you think about that?
Conceptually, I think it makes sense. I mean, even, you and I have both started implementing the Pomodoro Method, where you give yourself a certain time frame to get something done and you don't allow any other distractions to happen, or you allow yourself a certain time frame to work on something. Whether you get it done or not is irrelevant. When the timer goes off, you're done. Right. And you move on to whatever's next. And I actually just yesterday had a list of things in my head that I woke up and I was like, I have to get all this stuff done. And I started my day with severe anxiety at 4 a.m., which was not fun. But I woke up at 4, just wide awake, and said, okay, these are all the things I'm going to get done. And I set a time limit for how long I was going to work on them. Mm-hmm. But a project that normally would have taken me 2 hours, I gave myself an hour and I got it done because I knew all I had was that hour to do it. So I stopped wasting time. I didn't let the family interrupt me. I didn't let a TV show. I didn't let Jewel Mania on my phone. Not so much Facebook, but more Jewel Mania. But I think if you give yourself that time frame, you naturally are going to get more done. Yeah. If you're limited.
Right.
If you're limited. And I think somebody somewhere once said, if you want something done, give it to someone who's busy, because they'll figure out how to get it done.
Right.
When you have unlimited time to do stuff, you have a tendency to procrastinate, and it's like, oh, I can do that later. But when you don't have later, you just do it.
Right. So, I mean, that's along the lines, and the same. So, kind of going back to the study, right? Because
back to what I was talking about. Thanks, Lisa, for sharing.
No, don't say that. But I'm saying I'm just moving. No, because that portion is a good setup, right?
Yeah.
So, but this is how. So then the company, like, let's go into how they implement it. Apart from just saying you just come to work and you won. So another thing is that this was the deal they made with their employees. They said, okay, if you want to get out by 1, you have to put your phone in a lock. You have to lock your phone. There's no social media. Like, you cannot be on social media, in essence, whether maybe on your laptop, I guess, but no social media. Lock your phone, and they discourage chit-chatting, or kind of. So with those guidelines in place, what do you think?
It's still part of the chit-chatting thing is what's difficult, because that's part of your company culture. is who do you work with? What is your relationship with the people you work with? You don't want to come in and be a button pusher in a button factory.
Yeah.
Like, no, people as a general, just people want to feel a part of something. Mm-hmm. And I think that eliminating chit chat and saying there's no socializing at work. I mean, I get off your phones. Like, don't socialize outside of work. But part of the company culture is socializing. That's what creates an environment you want to work in.
Yeah.
Whether it be 5 hours a day or 10 hours a day.
Right.
It is your coworkers. I mean, my favorite jobs that I've had, it's been my coworkers that have made me love that job. Mm-hmm. It's, it's the company, of course, but I think my relationship with my coworkers, because that makes me look forward to going.
Yeah. So I don't know how in depth they went. I think they discouraged because there's water cooler talk.
Right. So
when that stuff happens, that does take away from productivity, right? And that is ineffective, right? So again, I don't know the ins and outs of how far of it, what degree did they take that to? But what's interesting, so we've if you look at like James Clear, Atomic Habits, right? He talks about when you have these triggers in place to be like that can potentially like ruin your productivity. And one thing is like your phone. Mm-hmm. So, in implementing that, in implementing a distraction-less environment, you would take your phone and you lock it. It's literally the same concept. And you don't look at it and you just put it away because what happens, right? You get a text and you get whatever. And again, going back to what we previously have talked about, urgency, a lot of things are not urgent. If somebody's calling, it can go to a voicemail. If somebody's texting, it can be responded to later, right? Depending on, what you do for work, right? I mean, a doctor, of course, can't necessarily put things down. They are on call. So it's all relative to what your work, but the majority, let's say 95 to 98% of all work or the workforce, a lot of things can wait. There's a very small percentage that is super urgent because it's life or death or it's whatever, right?
Well, for the most part, if you're locking up your cell phone at work, you have a desk phone that's your work phone.
Yeah.
You're not out of touch with the world, but I mean, in that type of situation.
Or you do have communication, but then that's another avenue you have to navigate so you don't get distracted, right, with emails and locking down potentially responding to emails if you're working on a very time-intensive task. So this no social media aspect, I think, is a no-brainer because I don't know what the studies are today. I could only imagine in the workforce how much productivity is lost because employees are on social media throughout the day while they're working. So again, going back to that 8-hour workday, let's just say for a normal 8-hour workday, people they're like, oh, I worked 8 hours. Like nobody really works a full 8 hours like from front to back.
No, you'd be exhausted.
Okay.
Exhausted.
That's like insane, like madness work. Like if you're just like on task for 8 hours. I mean, especially if you're at a desk job, it probably doesn't exist a full 8 hours for the most part. I'm not saying it. Right. I'm saying for the most part because in between that 8 hours, you're doing a lot of things. You're going to get coffee. You're going to go look at your social media. You're going to potentially have a conversation. I mean, there's a lot of time that's being spent on nothing that is really producing anything, right? But that goes back to what you were saying. Is that part of the culture and how you develop culture? Not to the point where you're unproductive, but to the point where you don't want to exit out or, kind of nip everything when it comes to actually building team culture so that people actually enjoy coming to work.
Right.
So it was interesting. So that was, that was kind of the way they implemented it, right? And the ultimate goal was, how could they manage human energy more efficiently? And we talked about that, right? The more time you get to do a task, the more opportunity and excuses you're going to find to be like, okay, I hit a milestone in this task. Let me take a break. Mm-hmm. Versus just hit that milestone, then hit the next one, just get it done, and then you're just done, right? And it goes, simple one, I always go back to conference calls because that's a lot of the time conference. I lived in that corporate world for many years, and you get on these calls, and it's just a waste of time. Like, you can email me what this was about, and we all could have saved ourselves hours and hours throughout any course of a year. In the corporate world is the joke, it's like you have to have a call to get prepped for the next call so that you can be ready for the final call. And then there's the debrief call that then you're going to have 4 other calls to debrief on that call. It's like there's all these calls and it's just a waste of time. So any other thoughts on that before we go into kind of what the next phase was in this whole experiment that they did?
No, I think we've touched on everything that's really been there. Some of it's no-brainer that I think whether you do a 5-day or a 5-hour workday or an 8-hour workday, you shouldn't be on social media.
Yeah.
Like during
I agree.
work. There's certain things that I think regardless of which time frame you're on, it shouldn't be. But
yeah, for the most part. Of course, if your job doesn't require you to be on social media.
Right.
With that caveat. All right. So they did that. And what they found was, so moving on right to this, was like that the employees enjoyed their time way too much when they got that extra time. Like they got off at 1 and who knows what they did. Maybe they went and got shit-faced or who knows. So, after work, it's like, it's 1 o'clock when it starts drinking.
Happy hour from 1 to 8.
Happy hour from 1 to 8. And then they didn't show up ready to work. I don't know what the detail was. But anyhow, they did realize like there was a gap. And so when somebody gets that much time back, what do you think what are the cons there? There's a lot of pros, but what are the cons?
Well, I think kind of what you just said is, some of it is many of us don't use our free time wisely. So if you have more of it, it doesn't mean you're going to use it more wisely. Yeah. I think the flip side of you get your work done then, but we all have stuff we need to tend to in our personal life. And we get it done because we only have a limited amount of time to get it done. You only have a limited amount of time to do grocery shopping, to do all those types of things. So I think one of the cons would be that it would be reversed. Mm-hmm. There would be more time wasted and lost and less productive in your personal life.
Okay.
Because you could always do it tomorrow.
Right.
I'm not going to work out today because I get off work tomorrow at 1. I'll work out tomorrow. And then tomorrow keeps becoming tomorrow, and that's a habit that's completely gone. Yeah. Because you've eliminated it due to just putting it off.
Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, it goes back to like developing. It's really about habits,
right?
So you're literally reorchestrating a workforce to be like, okay, we're gonna engineer this time so you're most productive. So that's probably a little, everybody's excited at the beginning. They're like, yeah, this is awesome. So and then they get committed to that, but then when they get off, it's like there's still responsibilities that for the next day tie back to being that much more productive. So if you get out and all of a sudden, you had a late night because you're like, I'm only going to work 5 hours tomorrow.
Right.
I'm not going to be there all day. So what does that encourage the workforce to do? To your point, spend time maybe that's not as in the best interest of the greater good of the company and so on. You show up to work and in the reading, and I read through it, and they didn't really touch on especially on the Forbes one, they didn't touch on the they just said that they were having too much of a good time. That can mean who knows, a lot of things. But if you look at what you potentially could be giving up is a regimen of understanding that when you have also 8 hours, like you're also mentally prepped for a long day, and you're probably not going to go out and get hammered,
right? Or
have a good night to where you're out till 1 a.m. or 12 or whatever. That's like way too late for us, by the way. Like we're like 9:30.
That's way too late.
That you potentially has a reverse effect. So you come to work and then you're not as productive because you're still trying to recover from the day. And I sense that was kind of some of the issues. So what they ended up doing was they went to summer months only, interestingly enough. So they went back to a normal work day, but in the summer, the incentive was during the summer months, mm-hmm. we're going to implement this. What do you think how that impacts clients?
Well, that was my first thought is, it depends on what your business is.
Yeah.
Because even going into, I remember when I went into real estate when I first started that, people would tell me, they're like, run your business like you're a doctor or a lawyer, and, you know, set your schedule and only work that schedule.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. And I tried that. But the industry doesn't play that way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I had a buyer not get a house because I wasn't available at 8:55 p.m. one night because I had set my hours and said, I'm not. And they, you know, I sort of got blindsided. They were not supposed to be reviewing offers till the next day. They did it, and I had set my hours. So it depends on what your industry is.
Yeah.
You know, if your clients need you until 5 and you're closed at 1, you could potentially lose business. Because they're saying, well, this company only works until 1, but company Z, they're going to be there until 5, and all my problems come up at 4:30.
Yeah.
So it sort of depends on the industry that you're in. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, not that you've asked, but I'm going to share what could be done.
Yeah.
You divide your workforce.
Sure.
You know, half of the people work from 8 to 1, and the other half work from noon to 5.
Yeah.
So you always have somebody staffed, but every person gets, and right. That works also because some people are morning people and some people aren't.
Yeah,
some people want to sleep in until 10 every day, and other people get up at 5.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that could potentially
business.
Right.
Because graveyard shifts, all these shifts, casino business too. I mean, whatever. It's the hospitality industry.
The hospitality industry really is like that, and retail. Is the same way. Yeah. But so I think you could divide and conquer your workforce and give everybody only those same 5 hours of work.
So. And you mentioned something about there is something to be said, though, if you can't manage your schedule. Like, you also have to be okay with the repercussions and be okay with that as a business owner. Because, you know, the norms, right? You know, what we know is normal today. Like, think about, like, whatever, 20 years ago. Like, what was the remote workforce? It didn't really exist. Mm-mm. So norms are changing as well, right? So we all think it's normal that no, you got to do these, but you'll only imagine how much unproductive time is being spent within 8 hours of a day, right? So here's a company that's like, all right, we're going to try some things out, which is really fascinating because if this catches on, it could change the way we think of like a workday, because as more proof is provided that you can be productive and literally get stuff that you think takes 8 hours done in 3.
Right.
And then start prepping for the next day. That starts to change the way we look at the workforce. I mean, you have other countries that go and like siestas and all this stuff, right? I mean, it's a different culture and different way of doing things. But it's not to say that even in the United States we couldn't implement something like that or change the way we look at, you know. I think the biggest challenge, and it's always going to be overcoming the fear that you're going to lose business.
Right.
Because even as a real estate agent, let's just say, going back to your example, you stuck to that schedule. You also have to mentally be okay with, I might lose a client. Or I might lose a few clients. But I got to do this because this is what I agreed, and this is the contract I made with myself and my business. And I can't break that. Or you also have to, you know, I think to your point, you know, there are times where you have to be a little flexible, you know. And I think that's what they did here, right? They're like, okay, we're going to do it. They went all in. They realized, okay, there's some gaps. And they drew it back. And they said, okay, summer. And I think it's just going to keep evolving and evolving. They did notice, too, that some of the projects took a little bit longer. So some of the employees did stay a little bit, like, you know, if they got off at 1, okay, maybe it was 2, right? Regardless, though, they still had that time off. You know, let's say maybe it was another hour or 2 hours. They still got back time that they otherwise didn't have when they had that full 8-hour workday. And
I think people would be more likely to stay longer.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
If they only work until 1. Because then it's well, I'm still making my same salary. Like,
exactly.
It's not going to hurt me to stay till 2.
Yeah, and especially as with time, you know, based projects, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to want to make sure you don't get to the point where you've sabotaged yourself to the point where, like, oh crap, I got way too much on my plate now. And now I'm forced to go back to working 8 hours because I wasn't as effective as I should have been during that 5-hour workday. Right?
And I guess I sort of think that as a society, and I'm not familiar with like how the workforce works in Europe, or I mean in this case it was Germany, but I mean I know as an American society we have this idea of an 8 to 10 hour workday. Yeah. You know, we say 8 hours, but the reality is most people work, you know, almost a 10-hour workday, I think, if you really look at what they work.
I think so too.
you're
or at
shifting.
least mentally, the space is allotted 10 hours.
Right.
Let's put it that way.
So, and there's something I want to touch on there too, but I think you're attempting to do a complete paradigm shift of a society.
Yeah.
That's not easy to do.
No.
You know, there are people who I think could do it and could get the work done and it would work for them. I don't know that that's the majority.
No, it has to be big corporate organizations that are willing to own up to like change. One, it could potentially save them a lot of money and retention of employees.
Well, I mean money alone, like think of Amazon. So we're here in Seattle area, we have Amazon. If Amazon undertook this, I think it would make waves in the entire country.
For sure.
Because they're big enough.
Yeah.
But it's not just so many. You're paying your employees the same thing, but now as a business owner, there's things I understand that I didn't when I was an employee.
Right.
You pay for electricity, you pay for water, you pay for snacks, there's things you pay for where if people are only there for 5 hours, that cuts in half all of that.
All that, yeah.
So your expenses are naturally going to go down as a business because you don't have people working around the clock in your building.
Yeah.
You know, if the lights are off, and if the lights are off in a building that has
saves a lot of money,
100,000 employees,
No, and
that's huge.
Yeah. All those costs are real. Those are real costs to a big organization like that. I mean, power. I mean, those are millions of dollars a year that they're paying for all these things.
You can cut costs on those. That makes a huge difference. And if your workforce is still productive. But again, it's an entire paradigm shift.
Yeah.
You have to change the way people think about work.
Yeah.
And that's very difficult to do. Not that it's not doable. I mean, it is doable, but it's a huge shift.
Something that I think we should look into.
No
we
kidding.
should try.
But so this is what I was going to say as I'm thinking about this. Is
how do we do it for our business?
So
how does a business owner that's listening today, like, how do they think through this, and like, how would I implement a 5-hour workday?
Well, so for me, and I can only go from my experience working. When we first started this company, I worked from 5 a.m. till 5 p.m. and would often get back to work from 11 p.m. till 1 a.m. Mm-hmm. I was no more productive than I am today. And I worked. I actually worked that entire time. It's not like I was slacking and doing other stuff. I was working that entire time. I'm more productive today. I work usually from 5 to 6 a.m. until 5 p.m. But I actually probably only work 5 to 6 hours. Like if I look at my working time, because I get the kids to school, I shower, that's a thing that I do between somewhere, I get work done and then I go take care of stuff.
Right.
And then when I come back to work, I'm like, okay, I have 35 emails to get through and I want to get through them fast because that allows me a chance to go, call one of our team members to see how they're doing. Or so I would say I probably only work 6 hours a day, but I work from 5 to 5. But I'm not about to go bragging like, oh, I work a 12-hour day, because I don't. I mean, let's be honest. Like,
that's what I mean. People that say that, it's like, it's not real. Like, you don't work full 12 hours. I mean, that's insane. I mean, and there are times in the business we've done it.
Right.
Where it's like, it is, it's pretty close to a full 12 hours. But you say in our conversations, oh, I did 15 hours. It was really 12 hours of the solid work that in the 3 hours of commuting or this or that, but you're still, I think the conversation's more around, it's not, productive, but when people talk about they work that many hours, I think they're really speaking to the mental space that's taken up.
Right.
Because once you wake up and it's 5 a.m. and you're already thinking about work, you're working. And especially as a remote workforce. Yes.
That's a different challenge people have. And we learned that really this year is that we had members of our team that were thinking they were working 12 to 13 hours.
There's no way.
And I'm looking at their workload and I'm looking at what they actually got done. I'm like, there's no way they were working 13 hours. So the thought was, where are they lying? A, that was the thought is, are they lying about what they're doing? Or B, they really think they're working 12 to 13 hours. Yeah. The challenge with a remote workforce is that whether you have an office or whether it's your kitchen table, whatever it is, the instant you put your computer up, you're working.
Yeah.
And just because you took 20 minutes to run your kid to school, you're still working. And then when you're making dinner for your family, if your computer's still up, you feel like you're still working.
Right.
But you're not.
It's not productive. And that's where he goes back to managing human energy more efficiently.
Right.
Like, if you were to really truly be productive in that short amount of time versus saying, hey, I work 13 hours or whatever. But you literally can condense that to like 3 hours and you're done. And our whole thing is just get your work done and be more, and then do whatever you want after that. And
right.
If you commit to that, you actually get a lot of free time back. So here's our segment of our optimizing segment of our episode, where we kind of talk about some ideas, advice, and certain type of tactics that you can implement to either improve your life, your business, and so on. So as we cover this topic, one thing to consider, and again, I go back to James Clear. We talked a little bit about James Clear at Atomic Habits out of his book. Talk a little bit about this whole case study, right, that was done on this German company. Give this a try. So when you start your day, commit to when you go to work that you're going to have, like, let's say we could use it as a Pomodoro kind of technique, where you're going to say, okay, for an hour, I'm going to put my phone away. I'm literally going to lock it up. Lock up your phone. Don't look at it with the mindset that nothing's going to go wrong, or the world isn't going to end, and really get committed to focusing on doing your tasks and getting the job done that you are supposed to be doing during that time, whether you're an employee or you are a business owner. And start to develop the habit of breaking away from being tied to our phone, right? Because our phone is so much part of us now, that sometimes we don't realize the impact it's having on us when it comes to being productive. So give that a try and commit to saying, okay, after that hour, then I'll spend 10 minutes maybe, checking a few of the messages, responding back some text messages, call somebody back, and so on. And then put it away again, and then commit to whatever that time frame is that you're willing to do. And if you got to chunk it and start small, do that. Maybe it's, I'm going to do it for 20 minutes. Because I would guess that a lot of us have our phone right on the desk, and the moment we get those dings, those notifications, we're automatically distracted to check them. So give that a try, see how it improves your productivity. And if you're a business owner, maybe try implementing that as part of a practice, a process, whatever, for your overall organization. It's a great topic. I think over the next few years, we're going to see these type of studies and companies trying new things so that, one, they can build a better workforce, two, greater retention and recruiting, right? As it gets more competitive in the marketplace. There's going to be more things like this that are going to be sprouting that organizations are going to be trying, and then it's going to be part of their literal recruitment tool of getting people to come on staff or retaining them, over time.
Well, and I think the workforce demands change.
Yeah.
I think it definitely does in the world that we live in, where people can work remote and people can, you can be in Hawaii and work from there on a beach and and nobody knows you're there. Like the workforce has changed with technology, and I think that's only going to be more so.
Yep.
So I think companies have to figure out ways to change.
Yeah.
And evolve.
Yep.
Cool.
Sign us off.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Co-Founders.